Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pal's Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be reviewing Glass. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. Glass is the final chapter in the trilogy that started with Unbreakable, followed by Split. To start off this review, I'm gonna basically go down my pros and cons like I normally do. Just letting you guys know that this is a third installment in a trilogy. And if you haven't seen Unbreakable and Split, I would recommend for you guys to go watch them because it gives you a bigger, complete picture of the movie, I guess. So for this movie, my pros are the acting, and just one of the actors stood out in this movie for me was James McAvoy. The way he personified all his different personalities was amazing to me. The next point is that I was really surprised that they did the twist, and this is a spoiler for people who haven't seen it. At the end, we discover the Clover Secret Society, and that reminded me of societies in comic books like Hydra and so forth that are lingering in the back shadows, and they only expose themselves at very specific times in the comic book timelines. The director actually, we know that he likes to come out in cameos in his movies. And what I appreciated about this movie is that he kind of came out in his cameo and he explained not only to David Dunn, which is the security guard played by Bruce Willis, the way he was in the previous movies. He was actually almost talking to us, breaking the fourth wall, saying, "Hey, I think I know you. Yeah, we met before. You were at the stadium. Yeah, back then I used to run with the bad crowd, but now I switched my life around." Because in the previous Unbreakable, he actually played a person, I think, in the stadium trying to sneak in drugs or something. In Split, now he's a security tech guy. So both movies have a timeline, I think in between it's like 15 years or so. So that to me gave me like a little chuckle. I'm like, okay, yeah, you had to explain your character. That's kind of an inside joke. And the next point is I really enjoyed the way the director played with the colors, the way he used the yellow, green, and purple. And also we saw red color in there in like most of his movies. Specifically in this movie, we saw the colors get brighter as each character believed more in his abilities. So for example, if David Dunn believed that he was a superhero, his color got brighter, a brighter dark green. Versus when he believed that he was not special, his color just faded away. And we saw this in his room, in his clothing, the same way we saw it with Elisha, Mr. Glass. His color purple, when he was sedated, it kind of blended away, it kind of faded. But once he started waking up, the color purple came back. So I really enjoyed that. And the same way when they're in the same room, all three characters, it's a pink room, which is a diluted color of red. So in this means that they're losing their power in front of the psychiatrist or the doctor, and she's trying to convince them that they're not what they think they are. They're nothing more than just normal humans. They're not superheroes. Even the Horde, which is amazing that the Horde themselves start disbelieving and not believing in the beast, and that's how they're trying to get controlled, and we see this through the colors. So that was kind of interesting to me. Also, the idea of the misdirection. And this plays a lot in comic books. As you're reading comic books, the story progresses in one way and then all of a sudden you get misdirected, but you never see this until the end. And this was played into the movie with Elisha talking about the Osaka Tower, trying to misdirect them, saying that that's where they're going, but initially his master plan was something else. Also, this plays a tribute to the Superman movie where Lex Luthor threatens Superman that he's going to release something from a giant tower. So that's a little homage to that. My final pro is the way the train incident connects all three characters, with Elijah being the mastermind behind the accident, David Dunn being the survivor of the train wreck, and Kevin being the person who lost his father on the train. To me, that really brought it together. It tied in all the movies. So this is one of the constant things that's in all the movies, the train. Now for my cons. Bruce Willis acting, it seemed like he just phoned it in. I did not really believe that he wanted to be in the movie. It seemed like he was drowsy all the time and just not really wanted to be in the movie and just doing the movie because it was a continuation of the other movies. I really wanted to know more about the Clover Secret Society. They kind of just hinted at it. I don't know if that was just to tease us, but at the same time, I wanted more. As a comic book fan, I always like it when they reveal something like that, but they try to explain it in further issues. I wanted also to know more about Casey. Casey Cook's character. What happened to her right after Split, how she went from that point to this point, what changed her, what kept the same. Also a little bit more about her backstory that we saw in Split. That would have been nice, or the foster home that she was in. So I think that's all my points, and I'm going to pass it on to Touly and see how he saw this movie.
So for me, let me preface my review by saying I didn't know anything about these characters before I saw the trailer for Glass. That meaning I haven't seen, at least up to that point, I haven't seen Unbreakable and Split. In order to have prepped me for Glass, I went ahead and I watched Unbreakable and Split for the first time that same week that Glass came out. This is more a review for Glass, but I'm just gonna say, in terms of Unbreakable and Split, I thought those movies were alright. I didn't think like they were some of the best movies in terms of like origin stories, but I think I still overall enjoy them. And the way I would say I enjoy them comes from the idea or the notion of how maybe some people would probably evaluate a film as to whether or not they like it or not. That is, sometimes we may judge a film or a piece of work based on how much we enjoyed it over the things that we didn't like about the films, whether we're being very picky or, things that just didn't sit well with us, with how things were shot or some of the lines or how they transition from scene to scenes, all the things that you would expect in a film. When it came to Glass, there was just, to me, a lot of things that I didn't like about the film that couldn't get overridden by the good things. The only real good thing that stood out, at least consistently throughout the film, was something that Sal already mentioned, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people could agree on this, and it was James McAvoy's acting, which he already proved to be capable of, his ability to act with these split personalities in Split. It just carried over to Glass. That I wasn't concerned about. His acting was pretty convincing in my opinion, and I enjoyed that. But with that being said, there's just so many things about Glass that I don't know if there's a term for it. For me, I think I just came to it's the two W words, at least in my movie experience. Like whenever a movie gets me to say, wait, what? That's sort of a feeling, or it's that sort of a reaction. And it gives me constantly doing that throughout a film and not make me very engaged in the film. Like he's disengaging me. That's what kept happening to me when I was watching Glass. I guess to provide some examples of that, even at the beginning of the film, they had to set up Bruce Willis's character, David Dunn, again, because there's some time has passed by since the last film. They initially teased us with what happened to his wife. They eventually revealed what happened to her. Obviously enough, though, I think the audience would have expected something bad happen to her because of the way they used a flashback scene to show how David reacted to his wife. We could already assume that, yes, something bad happened to her. And of course, later we found out that she died. And then we sort of saw the same thing with James McAvoy's character with the Horde. His character still doing the same thing that he was trying to do in Split, capturing these females, and eventually the Beast, coming out and doing what the Beast sort of did in Split. They were using like these either flashbacks, mechanics, or things that we already knew from watching Split or Unbreakable to sort of set up Glass. For me, I don't think it's necessary, because that was the reason why you had Unbreakable and Split already. It was supposed to set up these characters so that we were aware of their character's motivation and who they are. So I didn't need that. But instead, they went in and showed that, and they followed suit with that. And because of this, I felt like a good portion of the film wasn't even about Mr. Glass, despite the name of the film being Glass. That just didn't make sense with me. Now, in terms of who I wanted to root for in this film, I didn't feel like I wanted to root for anybody. There was like no reason for me to legitimately believe in any of these characters. I'll quickly go through like some of these characters. For example, David Dunn's character. Sal already mentioned just the acting that Bruce Willis was doing for this character in this film. Like very lackadaisical, it felt like. Very, very dull. Didn't seem like he was motivated. So his character, David Dunn, didn't get put into like the spotlight that it could have been from like the most protagonist position out of the three main characters here. And again, just a lot of use of flashback to explain stuff. That doesn't help any of these characters' development as well in this film, because when you rely too much on flashback, then you could pretty much plug in anything you want to explain the situation. And even they already used these mechanics a lot in Unbreakable and Split, it just carried on over. And I thought to myself, there should be better ways for you to storytell or make me believe in these characters, to set up one from one situation to another. But they kept on relying on flashback flashback. And the more I saw that, I was like, okay, either you don't know how to tell a story fluently because you keep using the same mechanic over and over to get yourself out of a situation to explain something, or you're doing this intentional. And because you're doing it intentional, then that means that you don't have a lot of things in your toolbox to rely on to make these characters shine on the stage. Moving on to James McAvoy's character, because his acting was so spot on and it shined, it's difficult to say bad things about his character, but in all honesty, his character still remained the same guy from Split. He's vulnerable when certain personalities come out. I didn't get the sense that he wanted to change on a personal level. Like it took somebody else to kind of guide him, and of course that's the in turn came in Casey, who was in Split. You know, we saw the Horde still doing the same thing that they were doing in Split, so that to me didn't show any sense of wanting to change. They were okay with who they are, and Casey tried to come in and save the group because she felt connected to them from interacting with them in the movie Split. But even then, with Casey's character, it was her motivation to help out James McAvoy's character. It felt so rushed. I understand where she was coming from. Like I said, she felt connected to some of these characters because of her personal history. But it felt so rushed. Like there was no setup for it. I realized this situation immediately when she came to the facility where Glass and the Overseer and the Horde where they were being held at, and the psychiatrist, who was played by Sarah Paulson, she was like, oh, you've been thinking about him a lot. And of course, she was talking about the Horde, and to show that she was concerned for him or something like that. And for me, I was like, if she was really concerned for him, she should have put in more effort before that point on her own to try to either save him or get to contact him or do something. But it took them capturing this guy for her to come out and then start behaving this way. It's like, no, you need to set us a motivation, show how she was still concerned about this guy somehow before he got caught, so that it gives us some source of understanding of who Casey is now at this point, just to convince me, to make her believable in her actions. But I just didn't feel that. It took the psychiatrist's own words to convince us of this other character's motivation, and this happened throughout the film for other characters as well. The son of David Dunn, like, I didn't feel he developed at all. He remained the same old child who still believed that his dad's a hero, and the way he went about trying to convince the psychiatrist that his dad was saying that they got the wrong guy. You know, he came up with this list of stuff and tried to tell the story to the psychiatrist when he visited his facility. I mean, to me, that was the joke. Who on earth would believe his story like that? So they treated his character, the son that is, as though like a child, despite him having grown over the years, despite him helping his dad run this security firm and helping his dad going after like the bad guys and stuff. The way he didn't stand up to the people who were, for lack of terms, beating up his dad at the end of the film and eventually killing him. I would have liked them to have shown at least him struggling, trying to protect his dad, or coming after the people who were killing him on the spot. It wasn't until after his dad died, spoiler alert, that you saw the scene where he was like standing there by the body and him pushing against the security individuals who committed the murder in front of him. I was like, where was that? Did that happen off screen? Because I would have loved to see that, because then it would show me that, you know what, he really does care, that he can be an individual. He knows how to think for himself, but they didn't even show that. And that I sort of blame, not the actor. I blame that on the storytelling element of you developing characters, or you should have shot this scene. You should have shown this. I think any normal person would have reacted the same way in this regard. Like, you see somebody, you see a loved one getting hurt like that, you would see them react strongly. You don't see this being like shown at all in the movie. So I'm like, okay, so why should I care about the son either? And Mr. Glass, I'm just gonna say this much about him from his mother's perspective. The mother seems to see the glass half full versus half empty. At least this is how I felt when she was talking to the psychiatrist. It seemed like she was in denial, the mother that is, when she said, oh, I know that my son has done stuff that hasn't been good. Or compare that to if she had said, I know my son has done a lot of bad things. There's a different impact when you say that versus the way she said it in this film, because one says that, okay, I admit that he hasn't done good things in his life, but I'm still okay with that, versus, oh, I know that he has done bad things, and now he has to live with the consequences. See, there's a different impact, I feel like, if she has said that line versus what she said. Because of that, it made the overall movie, and even things that led back to Unbreakable, an excuse for Mr. Glass. Like, people kept on overlooking the fact, hey, did you guys realize this guy killed a lot of people just to get to where he's at and what he's trying to get to? But people seem to overlook that. And we're going to treat his characters
just like Bruce Willis's character and James McAvoy's character. And he even said himself, and I'm not sure if they were intentionally trying to break the fourth wall here, but the way they did it, it just never sits well with me, because I don't know, it's just, for the lack of term, it's this M. Night Shyamalan thing where he thinks he's doing it in such a fluid way, but he comes out and just says it directly to her face. It says to me that, maybe you as the audience won't get this, so I'll have to say it for you. And one of those lines in this film was when Glass was talking to his mother right before what happened to him at the end. It's like, oh no, this limit issue, whatever, this is an origin story. When he said that, I was thinking to myself, yeah, I sort of realized that already. Why did you need to say that? You let the story of the film speak for itself. Why are you coming out and telling me that it's an origin story? I get that. And that's not even the first time he said it. Like, they even said it at the end, where when the psychiatrist was at the comic book store, she overheard the two guys in the shop saying, oh, the mastermind who's normally behind all of this, he always has something up his sleeve. He normally does something to deceive you and to hide what his true intentions are. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I would expect that. I mean, there's a lot of, and I'm going to say superhero films in this instance, because this is close to the identity of the film, but there are plenty of other forms of entertainment in the film industry or TV industry that do these sort of things, where you're like, when a bad guy ends up doing something and it leads you into what their mission is, or what a follow-up action is, or whatever. I've seen it in other stuff where they don't need to come out and tell you, hey, watch out for this bad guy, I think he still has something on his sleeve. No, they just do it because I sort of already expect it. It should happen. If it's a one-time thing, yeah, okay, that's fine. I could live with that. But the fact that this thing keeps on occurring, maybe not just in this series of his, like, my M. Night Shyamalan's film, I'm starting to think to myself, he's doing this intentionally because he really thinks maybe the audience won't get it. If that's just the way you're gonna storytell it, then I don't buy it, because I just don't find it believable. Just like I didn't find the psychiatrist's actions believable when she came up to David Dunn at the end right before he died. It's like, oh, at least tell me, was I able to convince you that you weren't a superhero or whatever? And for me, I'm like, on an audience perspective level, I was telling myself, no, she wasn't believable as a psychiatrist, because A, you didn't even introduce who she was at the beginning of the film. You just brought her in after, like, during the fight between David Dunn and the Horde. It was like, oop, here she is, out of the blue. It was like, no, I needed to get set up. Who is this character? Show me the small little things that gives me an indication that maybe she's the bad guy, or maybe she is the good guy initially. Like, she's trying to help these fellas. Like, give me something. Don't just, like, throw me into the scene without knowing or expecting this character to be there, so that I know what she's doing coincides with her actions down the road. And because of this, I never thought that she was a psychiatrist. And sure enough, towards the end, I find out that she has an agenda. She's part of this group. I was like, oh, that's a big surprise. At that point, it's like, I didn't care about these characters. I didn't have much of a drive to want to know more about this other group that she was initially, from. Oh, and about the big reveal at the end about Jay McAvoy's character, about his dad being on the train that David Dunn was on, but who ended up getting killed. I thought the delivery was so bad. I thought they could have set that up better. That thing was the thing that was gonna set the beats against Mr. Glass. And for something like that, for it to just have taken place in the same scene, it's like, oh, spoiler alert. And again, trying to break the fourth wall or whatever here, where Samuel L. Jackson's character, Elijah Price, aka Mr. Glass, like, you're not supposed to say this yet. The spoilers, you're not supposed to reveal the spoiler yet. What? Why? I know you're trying to go for the comic book vibe and stuff by saying something like that, but no, you need to set this up. You already shown that a few of these characters, they know of this because of certain foreshadowing. Okay, but the way they revealed it was so cheesy, and the impact was so minimal because of how, like, Mr. Glass reacted to it, and I was like, you could have done better, way better. And because of this, I just thought, like, this film, I know it was probably not shot this way, it was not probably produced this way, I'm pretty sure they put a lot of thought into it, but to me, the film seemed like it seemed like a very choppy film, where, like, maybe M. Night had a really great idea to start out with. It's like, okay, we're gonna start with David Dunn's character, and we're gonna kind of retell his stories that people get reintroduced to his film. Same thing with the Horde. Maybe around that point, he starts thinking to himself, you know what? I don't know what to do now. But you know what's a great idea? Let me just throw this in. Be unable to tie things together with, again, the characters, their motivation and stuff for them to, like, at least make it believable. I think this is where it came from. It's like, oh, okay, so now we're at the facility. Now what we should do? Oh, you know what's a great idea? Let's have the psychiatrist diagnose these individuals or get them together to talk. Then what? Let's have these small talks with these individuals, by themselves in their room. Oh, and then let's have these Oh, then what next? Then what's next? Oh, no, let's have Mr. Glass finally come out and reveal his master plan and stuff. And it was like the transitions from like seeing certain scenes were like so rough. And because of it, it felt very choppy. And it just, again, felt like one of those things where they were coming up with ideas on the spot and then they just shot it. And like I said, I know that it's not the way they did it. In reality, I'm pretty sure they put a lot of thought into it, but it just came out feeling like that to me. Even in terms of like storytelling, like pacing and transition, and for things to be coherently put together, I just didn't felt it in this film. There's just like so many other things I could point out. But hopefully by me already saying that much, that it goes back to what I prefaced earlier, where I said, even if I found other things that I could have possibly liked about this film, there were so many bad things that I didn't like about it, that overweighed the good stuff. And because of that, in the end, I didn't feel like this film was that great. And to be honest, I felt that maybe had I not watched Unbreakable and Split, that maybe I would have enjoyed this film that much more. Because when I saw the trailer, I was interested. I was able to already sort of like formulate some sort of identity for these characters in terms of like their background, because it did have that superhero sort of vibe to it. You know, I think it was sort of like that thing that got me interested in watching Glass. But after watching Unbreakable and Split, and then for those movies to have carried over into this film, I wouldn't say my expectations were high, but there were some expectations in terms of how I would have expected certain things to have developed, but it just never happened the way it did. And I don't want the excuse of like M. Night being creative, that it was shot the way it shot. It's like, no, I think it was shot the way it shot because didn't know how to shoot these things effectively. The way he handled these films, yeah, it's different from other superhero films. It's more about the persona and being able to showcase this in front of the crowd. It was less about the actions, as we have already been shown in Unbreakable and Split. There's very minimal actions in these sort of films. And it's to be expected of characters who have origin story. You don't expect these very grand, epic fights that you would in Avengers film or something like that. Because those characters, at least for most of them, you have already gotten an origin story in some retrospect. So then you would expect something like that. But here, because each film is named after the main characters, I would expect some sort of an origin still. But even in this film, like I said, it's named after Glass, and we don't get the full impact of Mr. Glass until the end of the film. And by that time, to me, it's already too late, because more than half the film should have been focused on Glass. I could go on for a bit about other things I didn't like about it, but hopefully that sort of gives you an idea as to how I feel about this film, and hopefully it justifies how I feel about the film. I mean, I don't expect a lot of people to feel the same way I do, but let me just say this much: for the people who actually walked out of the room during my sit through, I think they probably did. So at least I'm safe to say I'm not the only person who felt this way about the film. All I can say is it is what it is.
Well, I mean, I am going to put out there that I am a little biased to this movie because I like comic books, and I try, I guess, deep down in my subconscious is to link it to comic books and stuff like that harder than anybody. But I would say the point of Glass, his whole master plan, because he did say that, like, you know, at the end, it's not a limited edition run. This is an origin story. And I think he was referencing that his master plan behind everything was to expose to the world the Clover Society was trying to keep down the special abilities of humans. He was trying to expose that. So to me, that kind of, in my mind, it made sense. But now hearing from what you said, it does bring it into a different light. Like I said, there's different points of view, and I'm really excited to record this because we saw the same movie, and I'm gonna bring it back to almost the director's way of shooting Unbreakable, the way he was using the upside down camera angles versus Split, where he was actually using the horizontal layout of the camera laying on its side. Stuff like that resonates with me in the point that each movie has its own little creativity stuff, but at the same time, hearing you talk about this, it does bring light to the way he worked the characters. He did not really put emphasis on the characters as much as other movies that we have critiqued before, and it brings the idea back to developing characters. I guess I got overwhelmed by the way he uses technique to record and describe certain elements with color, direction, camera angles versus did he develop the character. So I am going to say this, that my grade is going to be biased, just letting you know. So with that, I guess let's give it our final grade. Touly?
Easily a 2 out of 10.
Wow. Okay. Well, like I said, my grade is biased. I gave it a 7 to 7.5 out of 10, but this is putting it the whole thing together, the 3 movies, like a comic book limited run, the beginning, middle, and end. Hopefully, we don't see any other continuation of this, and I think we can basically put this movie to rest. Also, just wanted to let you know about this channel, CZ's World. I've seen this guy. He reviews horror movies. He went back and revisited Unbreakable and Split. He dissected them further than I've seen it done before. And there's going to be links down to his videos down below. So if you'd like to check that out, please go ahead. So I guess that does it for this movie review of Glass. Please join us next time when we are going to review the movie Arctic. Social media is down in the description, and hit us up if you have any questions. And remember, keep watching movies.